In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Gerhard Mathangani.
After more than 3 decades in the coaching profession, Gus Malzahn has called it a career. The former Auburn head coach and Arkansas assistant coach spent a lot of time in the SEC. Some memorable Iron Bowl games with him as the coach, and of course, led the Auburn Tigers to the 2013 National Championship game where they lost to Florida State. Gus Malzahn, 60 years old, will hang it up as a coach. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. And Patrick, I don't know how this news hit you, but I thought at the time, I was like, hey, Gus Malzahn seems young. He's 60 years old. So, of course, I think he's got plenty as far as like in the tank goes. But it did seem like for him, he started to slow down a little bit more. He was the offensive coordinator at Florida State, had a pretty solid season. But interesting thing to read here today, still a few months out from the season, Gus Malzahn stepping down.
Yeah, I don't really know what my first reaction was. I just saw on my phone, I was like, oh man, Gus Malzahn, he's retiring. And honestly, the first thing I thought of was how fitting this comes a day after Alabama got obliterated by 23, just because it seemed like he always had Alabama's number. It looked like this season, all the lead up in the offseason was to the Florida State-Alabama game in week 1, and that was by far and away Florida State's best performance of the year, and
Absolutely.
They just weren't able to replicate that moving forward. So it was just so weird how, one guy has owned basically an entire football program his entire career. And, I go back to what Nick Saban would always say about Jordan-Hare being haunted. Is it Jordan-Hare or was it Gus Malzahn that was haunting him? Right,
and you can make an argument that of all the coaches that had multiple games against Nick Saban, he probably had the most success. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just thinking back on the guys that had to coach against Nick Saban year in and year out, he probably had the most success out of any of those coaches. Of course, he brought that RPO. He brought a lot of different concepts that gave Nick Saban and those defenses a lot of trouble over the years. I kind of remember him that way, just a guy that was really innovative at the time. I know a lot of Auburn fans grew a lot of frustration, especially late in his tenure, because it felt like Auburn was running out the same offense all the time. But it does seem to me that he does have a unique place in Auburn history. Although he didn't win the championship in 2013, that team made it to the championship, a memorable season. But he was also the offensive coordinator for the 2010 team, and possibly the most, I would say, maybe Fernando Mendoza this year, but a single season, an unbelievable just run from an individual player, that Cam Newton year, and he was the OC for that team.
Yeah, and you could put him up there with Fernando Mendoza. You could put him up there with Joe Burrow's historic 2019 season. It was just a great career, especially at Auburn, and then eventually moved on to UCF, had a few good years there before moving on to Florida State this year. And I don't know if it was kind of him accepting the fact that, hey, I don't know if I can really do this anymore, because it really is an insane time commitment to be able to not only lead a team, and especially with how today's game in the direction it's going.
Correct.
You have to be thinking about recruiting all the time throughout the entire year. And at this point, as we've started to see, and we'll get into here in just a few minutes, if you're not tampering, so to speak, you're not truly trying, because like everybody's doing it at this point. So it takes a big strain. I know he was the OC this year, but I think he accepted the fact that, hey, I just cannot put this time commitment in it anymore. I just want to be with my family.
Absolutely. Great topics on today's show. As always, we will dive more into this Gus Malzahn announcing his retirement, and current Auburn head coach Alex Golesh blasts the state of tampering. We talked about that just a moment ago. We'll dive deep into that and exactly what he said as it relates to a couple of SEC schools that were in hot water over the last couple of weeks. Some NBA players, this time legitimate NBA players, not just the G Leaguers, looking to go back into college basketball. What that means for the future of the sport. And Florida absolutely hammers Alabama, and some chirping between the two head coaches there in that matchup. Great guests on board today. We'll have Roger Wallace and Corey Curtis. joining us from Austin and Nashville, respectively. But let's go back to this Gus Malzahn announcement today. I will always associate him. I know he spent a lot of time in the ACC and with the Group of Five in Central Florida, but I will always associate him with his days at Auburn, and before that at Arkansas, before he was the Arkansas State head coach. But this, to me, he's a guy that I think, obviously, when you coach in the same era as Nick Saban, it reminds me a lot of the guys that played in the same era as Michael Jordan. Like you have, whether it's Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Reggie Miller, you had a lot of guys that had a lot of success, but Jordan blocked a lot of those guys from winning championships, and I feel like he had to coach with the greatest to ever do it. He had to do it in the exact same state. So, I mean, given all he had to go through, I thought that he had a really remarkable career at Auburn, because it had to be probably one of the hardest times to be an Auburn head coach.
Is it fair to say that he is the Eli Manning to Nick Saban being the Tom Brady? Like, is that a fair comparison to say? Because,
Probably.
I mean, Tom Brady was by far and away the GOAT of his generation, and the only guy to really stop him sometimes was Eli Manning.
Right.
And, I mean, you can't necessarily say that in true just because they'd never, like, obviously Eli played Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, and Alabama and Auburn didn't really. I mean, you could make the argument that whoever won the Iron Bowl was going to eventually go on to be the national champion.
For a while, that was the case, yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's – I was trying to think of a comparison, and I don't know if I could really make one to Jordan, because the Bulls were just so good in the 90s.
Right.
I feel like that's the only one that you could sort of make any resemblance to.
Yeah, because and to your point, the fact that Eli got Brady a couple of times, won a championship, that will be kind of the one thing, quote unquote, on his resume that people will say, hey, he didn't win a national championship. Gene Chizik won a national championship.
Right.
And Gus Malzahn was on that staff, but he did not win a national championship based on that 2013 season. That 2013 season was absolutely insane. And what Auburn was able to do, with Gus Malzahn, I think, being able to get him, back from Arkansas State, he was the head coach, I think it was a huge win for Auburn and a big boost for Auburn. There you see, it felt like highs and lows, because the highs were an appearance in the national championship game, but the lows were appearances in the Birmingham Bowl and the Music City Bowl. And so I know that they ended up winning those games, but you have 105 wins overall, more than 60 there with the Auburn Tigers. I feel like this is he kind of lives in this weird space where I think it just depends. If you're a Bama fan, I think that you looked at him and you're like, okay, he will always have a team that's a threat, at least. And if you're an Auburn fan, it's like, we were that close to a national championship.
Yeah.
Then he won a national championship as the offensive coordinator. I just feel like you probably have to see it through a couple different prisms.
And obviously, we still have to see what is going to happen this season with Alex Golesh on the Plains. But is it fair to say that when Gus Malzahn was the head coach at Auburn, it always felt like there was a chance to win a game, whereas sometimes in recent years, it's like, it's just it's so crazy what mental fortitude does in sport, because especially this past season, it was like, all right, the defense is good, but what is the offense going to do this game?
Correct.
What's going to let us down this game? But whereas I feel like some, and I've been seeing this all over social media, some people were saying, hey, whenever Gus was the head coach, it just felt like we always had a chance to win a game.
Absolutely. And there you saw he was the 2013 AP Coach of the Year and won those 68 games. This is that 2013 season where Auburn obviously makes the national championship game, but they do it on the heels of possibly two of the greatest plays, individual plays.
Not possibly.
Kick six for sure. Prayer, Jordan Hare, we've seen Hail Marys before, but considering the stakes that were involved in the Auburn-Georgia game, then you had the Iron Bowl with the kick six right after that. That is probably, to your point from earlier, why Nick Saban says that Jordan Hare Stadium is haunted. And I don't think he was just talking about just his team. He actually just, watching the film of the Georgia game that happened the week before, 2 weeks before, and going in, and that season to me will always be colored. When I close my eyes, that graphic was saying, when you think of you think of Gus Malzahn's legacy, that season will always be, when I close my eyes and think of Gus Malzahn, I think about him in right after the kick six, him going crazy, and then after the SEC championship game, just going absolutely insane because they had made the college football playoff, the BCS championship there at the time, and it seems to me that like I'll associate him with happy moments and good moments, despite the fact that if you look down the road, they didn't end up winning at all.
Yeah, and honestly, I think in my opinion, when I look at Gus Malzahn's career, I think for me his legacy is going to be he did a great job of getting his teams to play in these big games, but he just couldn't get it done. You talk about the national championship, some of these New Year's Six bowl games that he got Auburn into. They played in them,
right?
But I believe they were 0-4, 0-5 in New Year's Six bowl games. Where, as we mentioned, the Birmingham Bowl and the Music City Bowl were the only 2 wins that he had, and I believe the Gasparilla Bowl was the other one that he had over at UCF. So I mean, he put his team in a position to get to these games. He just was never able to get over the hump, and I mean that's no disrespect to him by any means.
Sure,
there's a lot of factors that go into it. I see it nowadays with the Cowboys. It seems like they can always put themselves in position to get to these games, but for some reason, one thing or another doesn't go their way, and then all of a sudden, it's just over. But
yeah, and another thing I think about when it comes to Gus Malzahn is that, like, for a while, it seemed that colleges felt a little bit gun shy to hire high school coaches.
Yeah,
and he was one of the first ones I remember who had an incredible high school coaching career. Wanted to go from high school to college, and a lot of times you have to start as support staff or whatever, and usually those guys aren't on the field.
Right.
He was on the field as the offensive coordinator first at Arkansas, and then he was a head coach at Arkansas State. But then after that, you saw guys like Hugh Freeze make the jump from high school into college. A couple others that come to mind. I just felt like he kind of almost changed the narrative of getting high school coaches to coach on the college level.
Yeah, and I think Eli Drinkwitz is another one.
Yes, that's another good one, yeah.
I believe he coached at Arkansas. And then even on the basketball side, I mean, Bucky McMillan.
Yes, yes.
I would almost classify Gus as basically a trailblazer for people to be able to go from the high school level up to college, and then sometimes if you do well enough in college, you could even make the jump up to the NFL.
Right.
But I mean, I would say he was probably a trailblazer in the high school to college ranks.
Absolutely, he coached at, I think it's Springdale High School there in Arkansas. An incredible career there, and then now it's ironic enough that he goes the jump from high school to offensive coordinator at Arkansas is followed up by him going as the offensive coordinator to Florida State, and then beating Alabama the last time he played him. I feel like that's like it's almost to me kind of fitting that like his last win. I know it's not in an Auburn jersey, it's not in an Arkansas jersey, but one of his last big wins. Obviously, they won a lot more games, but one of his last big wins is a huge win over Alabama.
Can you explain to me why can one person have so much success against one school? Like can you explain that to me? Because I just don't understand what it is. No matter where you're at, you still have success. I mean, is it just a pure hatred or something?
I think
like
so,
the rivalry just runs that deep?
Yeah, maybe just like dial in a little bit more.
I mean, he did have the entire offseason to game plan. I'm sure he had Castellanos in his office like, hey, first day on campus after transferring from Boston College, hey, I don't care what we do next year. Just as long as we beat Alabama week 1, we're gonna be good.
Yep.
And I'm sure he started game planning from day 1 and everything, and then blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. During the break, we'll do the Gus Malzahn bubblegum chew, because I just remember him like always like just chew it like the chews. There's no scientific way to do this, but I feel like the teeth pressure, it was the same as a shark, depending on what down it was. Fourth quarter, third down, that thing was just hardcore. But Gus Malzahn calling it a career, age 60 years old, and says he's going to spend some time with his family. I know a lot of people around here know Christy Malzahn, his wife, very well. He's recruited in this area, a lot well-respected head coach, and we hope that he enjoys his retirement. A couple ties there with the SEC. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we go from the former Auburn coach to the current Auburn head coach, and Alex Golesh. He did not hold back when it comes to tampering. You'll hear what he said. We'll break it down next. We're back here on Southeast Sports Plus. We just broke down former Auburn head coach Gus Malzahn's decision to step away from football and retire. Meanwhile, the current Auburn head coach Alex Golesh, he just walked into the league not that long ago, and he told everybody at the Senior Bowl media day, he was like, "Hey, guy, I'm the new guy on the block," but he didn't hold back when it comes to tampering. Obviously, the week before, the biggest story in the headlines was the fact that Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney came out and talked a lot about Ole Miss and them obviously recruiting, brought the receipts. Then a little bit later on, it comes out that LSU could be in some hot water there as well. I'll tell you what, Patrick, I think that this Alex Golesh and tampering overall, we're in a really precarious situation as we head into the 2026 season.
Yeah, and I don't really – I think last week we talked about, all right, what are the so-called consequences going to be moving forward for these teams? Because obviously tampering is not good. Mm-hmm. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the group of five. It's not good for even these P4 schools that are getting their players basically nudged and saying, hey, you know, why don't you enter the portal? We'll give you more money and more playing time than where you're at right now. Like, obviously that's not going to be good. But,
right.
I mean, I think it's at a certain point it becomes time to fully address this and be like, hey, you know, this is obviously bad for the sport, but right. What are we going to do about it moving forward?
Yeah. And Alex Golesh spoke here recently about tampering and went on a bit of a rant here, and he says a lot of things, and I think also spoke a little philosophically about what he thinks about tampering and where the state of college football is right now.
Man, that's a loaded question with a lot of tentacles off of it. Yeah, so at South Florida, I would tell you not as crazy as you would think. You had relationships with guys and you were running a program based on authentic things. I think it's all relative, you know, like we used to talk about at the group of five level, like, man, people are going to come get our kids. Well, look at who's in front of the podium right now complaining about it. You know, like the level's irrelevant. It truly is all relative to where you are. It's been going on for a really long time. This portal era, I think, amplified it in every imaginable way. There eventually needs to be guardrails on this thing. I think we all want guardrails. I think we all want to know the rules in which you can operate in. The truth is, right now there aren't any. So you operate ethically as with what you feel like is right. Is it right to call a kid that's on somebody else's roster to go get him? It's not. I think in a lot of ways what goes around comes around. In the fall, you got to go line up and play. And I'm a strong believer in the football gods will find you at some point, and generally they'll find you at the end of a game, or they'll find you on 4th and 1. And I think you got to do things the right way. And the right way is doing right by the young people and doing right by your program. But the pressure to win is great, and people feel it in different ways. And so I'm not here to judge anybody else's decisions on how they operate, but you would love to have some guardrails within the system. And I think maybe as I establish myself in this conference, I'll have more vocal opinions. Right now, I'm just the new guy on the block trying to build a program here at Auburn and do it the right way.
This is really interesting, I think, for Alex Golesh, because he did speak candidly about some of the particulars. He talked, is it okay to go on, somebody who's already committed somewhere else on campus, taking classes, and to be still calling that person? He thinks that it is wrong. Other people don't think so. Other people blatantly will continue to go after these guys. I have a question that if you think tampering has gotten out of hand, or is this just the way that it is and we're just going to have to kind of deal with it?
You know, I was thinking about this on my drive into work, and honestly, I feel like it has to have gotten out of hand, because now if you're not trying to do it, you're a step behind everyone else.
Right.
I mean, as much as some of these schools like Dabo Swinney wants to, sit here and talk about how Ole Miss is basically, ruining college football and laying out all of the receipts on exactly what happened, it's not just Ole Miss. I mean, we've talked about on the show a few times. Ty Simpson almost came back to college football and went to Miami. I mean, Miami reportedly offered him $6.5 million to, take your name out of the draft and then head over there to Miami. And now you look at where the Hurricanes had to go since Ty Simpson didn't come back. I mean, Darian Mensah, that whole legal battle. Damon Williams up at Washington.
Yeah.
If you aren't trying to do something, you're a step behind. But here's the thing. Everyone's going to keep doing it until you start handing down these punishments, because at this point it's like, all right, well, yeah, you're gonna sit here and say that you're gonna, I don't know, fine me, threaten to report me to the NCAA, but nothing's gonna come from it because nothing has come from it already. So I'm just going to keep doing it. So I think until something actually happens here, until there's actually punishments handed out, it's still going to be a thing, and it's just going to be commonplace in college football and college basketball.
Absolutely. Auburn's transfer portal class was really interesting because they got a bunch of guys that were from South Florida. That's exactly where Alex Golesh was overall. 39 commitments overall. 13 of those guys were followed him from his days over with the Bulls. A couple of 4-stars. That includes the starting quarterback and Byron Brown. That is 6th there in the SEC. What I found really interesting about that sound, though, is the fact that he says, you know, if you think it's bad at the Group of 5 level, because one of the things we've always said, at the Group of 5 level, limited resources, and next thing you know, you have a good season, now you're up at the Power 4. And I feel like coaches are trying to steer away from that. But what Golesh I thought was interesting is, like, we actually don't have a problem with it as much. And then he says, if you look at the guy at the podium, he didn't mention Dabo by name, but he's basically saying, hey, look, if you think it's bad, you know, from where he was, think of how bad it must have been from where we were. It's really, and he was trying to defend it. I think he was trying to defend, you know, coaches there at that level. I just thought that was really an interesting take, that, you know, he is now at the Power 4 level where they do have the resources to make these kinds of offers. We heard from Dabo Swinney's mouth about what the kind of money that Ole Miss was offering. Yeah. We've heard openly about the kind of money LSU is offering, and it just seems to me that that Auburn and college sports is in a really interesting situation.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, this is definitely, I totally agree with what he's saying, because this is more of a problem at the P4 level. I mean, you want to take a look at some of the cases that we just outlined. Damon Williams reportedly was getting tampered with by LSU.
That's
so
right.
That's Power 4 on Power 4. Obviously, the whole situation with Clemson transfer linebacker Luke Farrelly going over to Ole Miss. Again, Power 4 on Power 4. We talked a few weeks ago about how Lane Kiffin reportedly leaked the NIL contracts of these Ole Miss guys. Power 4 on Power 4. And then finally, Darian Mensah.
Right.
Power 4 on Power 4.
Yep.
So I feel like this is where it's the P4 level that's really facing the brunt of this right now, because there's just so much money that can go around.
That's right.
I mean, I'd have to take a look at how much money Darian Mensah's making, but I'm sure it's a lot of money.
Well, I know when he left Tulane for Duke, it was in the neighborhood of $4 million. So you would think it's going to be even more.
And he signed a multi-year deal.
That's right.
That's the whole reason why, you know, hey, Duke is going to sue Darian Mensah to hold him accountable. That's why Damon Williams was being held accountable as well. So, I mean, it's crazy times.
And I felt that Miami was oddly calm after the national championship game, knowing that Carson Beck wasn't coming back, but because I think that they knew either they would convince Ty Simpson to come back for another year of college, or they would get Darian Mensah to come back, and then Mensah fights with his old school, unlike Damon Williams, who ends up going back to Washington after the legal talk starts. Mensah does not, so he ends up leaving. They settle something, I guess, out of court, and then next thing you know, he's now a Miami Hurricane. This to me is just flat out interesting. And take a look at this, the SEC, the top 5 there of the transfer portal, led by the Portal King himself. I know that Lane Kiffin dubs himself as that guy. I find it really interesting that Ole Miss comes in number 2. No surprise that Texas is there at number 3. Kentucky is a bit of a surprise at number 4. Will Stein putting in work, and then Texas A&M there at number 5 overall, number 12. So the SEC occupies 5 of the top 12, letting you know just how competitive this conference is.
Yeah, and then right behind Texas A&M is Auburn. So
That's
I mean, it's basically 6 within the top 15. We knew it was going to be between LSU and Ole Miss. The whole I dubbed it the Cold War of college football. You know, these two programs going back and forth with one another. You knew that they were going to be the number 1 and number 2 classes. But Lane Kiffin, we did get to hear from him recently, talking about how his class and what makes LSU so important.
you know, it'll be the best portal class in the history of college football. Now, that still is a lot of work to do once they get here. But to assemble that talent, you could not do that anywhere else. And when I got up there and I spoke and I said, hey, this is a message to the best players in the country about where to come. We came here together to put ourselves together with LSU and to put that together to give the players this to come to and to see the early success before we've ever won a game. These guys have all the options in the country of where to go. And really, as you get really to this last week and they've seen the other great players come, we've got guys that normally in a situation would say, you know, you guys are already loaded at that position, I'm not coming there. And when they come, they say, actually, these other places, sometimes they're offering more money, it's a better depth chart to go into. But those are the guys that are choosing to say, I don't care, I want to be part of this special thing. And I want to be part of a great LSU team, that there's been so many great LSU teams in the past, but now you get a chance to be one that starts a new era, that changes everything. So in that first year when we have that great season, they're always remembered when they come back 10, 20 years from now, like, man, remember when LSU was down a little bit? We were that team that brought it back to where it had been before and where it will stay. So it's just a really exciting time to put it all together. And you know, we created an atmosphere that people want to be at, not have to be at.
Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head out to Austin, Texas after a big weekend on the court for both men's and women's basketball teams. We'll check in with Roger Wallace coming up next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we open up another week of college basketball after a really intriguing week of games so far. On Saturday, we had a really great game as Texas ends up having a really strong comeback against their arch rivals from Oklahoma. We have it break it all down with our good buddy Roger Wallace joining us from Austin, Texas. First of all, Roger, this is a men's team that feels to me almost like a bit of an enigma. Like they're good games, really solid. They go to Bama, they get a big win, nice little winning streak, go down by 14 points to Oklahoma, come back and win it. After you broke that game down, what were some of the things that really stand out about this team and some of the things that Coach Sean Miller is implementing here in SEC play?
Well, the simple answer, guys, is because, you know, Sean Miller says we can foul the S out of teams, is they didn't. Oklahoma shot 16 free throws
right
after Auburn shot 39 last week. So that's a pretty easy answer right there. You give them less free chances. But they got some guys that stepped up that they really needed to. Simeon Wilcher, the transfer from St. John's, I think they expected more out of him, and he's kind of been struggling, and he hit a couple of big threes. And then Jordan Pope got going after struggling in the first half. And, I mean, he's a knockdown shooter, but as a point guard, they need him to do that. There are some point guards that can, you know, affect the game in so many different ways. His first way to affect the game is to knock down shots. And then Dalen Swain's just a kind of a unique guy, his ability to score. And Oklahoma, you kind of get the feeling that their minds got the best of them once Texas erased that lead, because they've been struggling so much since their first SEC game that they won. And so probably that also played into Texas's favor. It's kind of like, here we go again. But yeah, that was a big win for this team. If you follow the projections, they're right on the cut line. So that would have been a bad loss. Turns out to be a decent win. Now they come home for two. And really, if they can't take care of these two this week, they're going to be right back where they started.
Yep.
just struggling to stay around 500. They get South Carolina on Tuesday, and then Chris Beard and LSU, or Ole Miss rather, come in Saturday. So 2 teams below them in the standings. But it's just a team with a margin for error that's not that big. So they've got to do a lot of things well. And Miller said we're not a very good defensive team, and we don't turn people over. That's a bad combination. But played well in the second half, really towards the end of the first half, and then in that second half.
You talked a little bit about Dalen Swain. What is the most impressive aspect of his game, in your opinion?
The way he can score in so many different ways. In some respects, he's kind of a throwback because now, it's 3-point shooters or, they're at the rim. And he does a little bit of everything. He's got great body control. He's got a great left. He finishes with his left as well as anybody I've seen this season. He's big. He's about 235 now and 6'7". But I just think the way he can score in so many different ways. Now, he's had a propensity for backing up big games with struggles. And so that's, one of the things they're looking for. He had the big game against Auburn, looked like he might struggle a bit against Oklahoma, then got things going. But he's just a scorer, and that's kind of a throwback in some ways because he can do it in so many ways. And when he shoots a 3, that's probably the biggest surprise. And usually you got to leave him open. He's not going to create a 3. He's more of a standstill 3-point shooter. But he's added that, so that makes it tough. You come out on him, and he can get to the rim against anybody.
Absolutely. Jordan Pope's a guy that has been talked about a lot because, yes, he can score, but it seems to me he's almost like a volume guy, a volume scorer overall. Where have you been the most impressed with him in SEC play and kind of his trajectory as he plays that kind of that second guy with Swain?
Well, I think the fact that he's an older guy keeps him from getting too down on himself when he's not scoring because, he knows that's such an important role. And we saw that in the second half. He was really struggling against Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden he hit a couple of big threes. And when he's going, he's such a rhythm shooter. You can almost see the way he shoots it and think this one's got a really good chance of going in, or vice versa. Sometimes you can tell maybe he's just shooting it because he's got an open look or thinks he has an open look. But like I said, he's not that typical point guard that affects the game in so many different ways that he's got to be hitting shots to be effective, especially with a team. As I said, they're a really good offensive team, but their margin for error is so slim that they've got to have a lot of things going right. And Pope knocking down some threes. It's one of the most efficient offenses in the country. The problem is they back it up with some inefficiency on the other side. That's what narrows that margin for error.
Absolutely. Speaking of, you teed that up perfectly, Coach Sean Miller, talking about Pope's defense needing to improve.
Our offense has continued to stay consistent and improve incrementally. I think where we're at and how we finish will be determined by one thing, and that is whoever we are today defensively, we cannot be the same team in March. Cannot. We will not be able to get to where we want to get to by being a very good offensive team and a subpar defensive team. We improved through our performance at Oklahoma in large part because we did not foul. And it wasn't a great defensive performance, but it was better and it was on the road, and we have to grow and build. So if we can maintain our level and get better defensively, I think there's some really good games in our future, and I believe we can end up being in a good place.
So Coach Sean Miller basically talking about how, his defense his team's defense needs to improve come March. Well, speaking of March, it's a month away, and you talked about how this team is right there on the bubble. I believe Joe Lunardi had them as the very last team in. Are they still in the picture right now with this win?
Yeah, I think they have to be. And I don't know how much these two games can help them, especially tomorrow night, but it certainly can hurt them if they lose. They close out. There you see the schedule, and right after that, I mean, that's, the thing about this league, guys, and I'm sure you're getting it from all over the SEC, is that, there doesn't appear to be that great team. Florida's starting to look like it. A&M's at the top of the standings, but, just getting in the rankings. But, man, you better be ready to go because they all seem to be that team. Texas is a great example of, you look at them, you go, oh, well, we can take care of them. Alabama probably was shocked what happened to them in Tuscaloosa, the way Texas had been playing. So Yeah, the league is not top heavy great. It's just heavy. And so I think they're in good position if they can stay around 500. But they close with Florida in Austin and then at A&M that last Saturday. And so, who knows what kind of shape they'll be in going there. But that's going to be a tough 2-game stretch down the road. But, this team, they'll surprise you. It's funny. They've got 4 wins in the conference, and OU was the first one that wasn't ranked. Right. Yet they have 2 home losses to unranked teams at the time in Mississippi State and A&M. So that I don't think that's a Texas thing. I think it's more of an SEC thing, Rao, as opposed to last year we had all these teams talking about Final Four teams. I think this year you just have a lot of really good teams. Now, again, Florida's seemed to kind of kicked it into another gear right now.
Absolutely.
Roger,
go ahead.
Does it sound like another conference that Texas used to be in where, it's not really top heavy, it's just heavy all across the board and any team can win basically on any night?
Yeah, especially when Kansas is a little more, human. Yeah. I mean, there were some years, guys, when Kansas was so good that it was them and everybody else. And then Scott Drew got Baylor on a run. Lately, Texas Tech. Now, Houston's kind of taken the place of a powerhouse, in the new look Big 12. But yeah, for sure, it looks that way. And here, with these gigantic conferences too, it's such a grinder. Even though it's just 18 games, but you're not seeing a lot of teams twice. You just have to keep lining up against teams. And Miller talked today about South Carolina, and I'm sure despite their struggles, he's got a lot of worry. I think he has a lot of worry too, because his team has been consistently inconsistent.
Right.
And it hasn't mattered where they've played. So that's reason enough for concern, not thinking, just because you went on the road and beat OU that any of that matters on Tuesday night.
Absolutely. If 1 win over Oklahoma is nice, 2 wins is absolutely great. The women also got a big win over the Sooners. And unlike the men's team, this is a top 10 matchup, one of a few matchups for Texas in a row that will be against ranked opponents. But they stay number 4 in the polls. What'd you make of that big win yesterday as and Madison Booker and company got it done?
Yeah, and that's an OU team, one of the top scoring teams in the country. Right. And Verhulst had to hit a half-court shot to get to 24 in the first half. So they scored 46 in the second half. They were much better offensively. But again, we've talked about this before. Texas just kind of does different things to you with their defense. And there's no question they wanted to slow down Aaliyah Chavez, the fierce recruiting battle with Chavez with Oklahoma and Texas. Of course, she's from Lubbock. And I think they thought they were in really good position. Ironically, coincidentally, their Leah Crump, who's been battling injury, actually had 12 points and a couple of big threes. Chavez scored 11. Now, Chavez does a lot of other things. She has to handle the ball so much. But, Crump's a really valuable player for this team that's missed a lot of time with an injury that gives them a different dimension. The fact that they hit 5 threes and OU only hit 6, you would have thought that's the most unlikely of stats coming out of that ball game. It's a team that doesn't need to hit threes. But, their defense, I don't know if you saw some of the defensive plays down the stretch. Roy Harmon made an incredible play where she hits a jumper, steals the inbound, flying out of bounds, throws it back. Justice Carlton catches it, lays it in, 4 points. It takes it from 9, I think, to 13. So, they have some offensive challenges at times, even though they're one of the highest scoring team, but that's primarily because that defense leads to offense. They haven't turned teams over. They haven't had that turnover margin lately that they've had in the past. So I'm sure that's a concern for Vic Schaefer as they're turning it over way more than he would like. But in the end, Booker hit some big shots, some answer shots when OU cut it. They got another big one Thursday night. LSU comes to town. So that'll be interesting to see round 2 in that round robin.
Before we move on to that one, it feels like we talk about Madison Booker every time we have you on, and she's definitely one of those anchor pieces for Vic Schaefer. But how impressed were you by Justice Carlton's performance, being able to step up as another scorer for him?
She's an interesting player because her demeanor is so kind of passive, yet she comes up with offensive rebounds. She has a great knack for the basket. But then she'll make some plays that'll get her right back on the bench. and make Vic Schaefer pull out what hair he has left. But she has a knack. She's only 6'1", maybe 6'2", but she plays bigger than that. She can stretch it out. She hit a 3 at the end of the quarter, but she's big. When she and Jordan Lee, they were the freshman class last year, and they were both highly regarded, and Lee kind of ascended a little bit quicker. Carlton had a fast start and then, kind of fell out of the rotation, because of some of the mistakes she made. And she still makes some of them, but she's so valuable because they need another productive big for this team to make a run, I think. And now if she plays like she is, they haven't gotten a whole lot out of Brea Cunningham lately. Kyla Oldacre does her thing. But, she's really valuable because they need more of a presence down low.
Absolutely. You mentioned that LSU game coming up, so there's only a really short time you can celebrate this win over Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry game, because LSU is coming up next. And for those that did not see earlier this season, LSU beat Texas earlier, 70-65. So what are some of the things that you need to see, or you would want to see, or Coach Schaefer wants to see from this team as they prepare to rematch with LSU in a top 5 game?
Well, first off, I think he wants his home court to be just absolutely electric, and it will be, because not just LSU, but who their coach is. And going back to the Big 12 days of Baylor with Kim Mulkey. So I think they're going to be ready to roll. It's a later start. It's an 8 o'clock start. But again, they just got to continue to play defense. LSU can match them athletically. They can get up and down the floor. They can pressure Texas just as well as Texas will pressure them. So I think they need to be efficient with the basketball and get off to a good start and then let that crowd take over, because even the way they struggled down in Baton Rouge, it was a 5-point ball game.
Right.
So I'm sure that didn't do anything to hurt their confidence. It was the back end of that South Carolina on Sunday and then LSU on Thursday trip. But this will be a big one. Not to mention I think they're up to 5, right? So
yeah.
They've already beaten 2 and 3 and 10, and now they get 5. So the resume's pretty strong, even though they sit right at number 4. And if you look at the top 4, that's probably your top 4 seeds right now. And I always say the difference between 1 and 2 seed, I don't find a great difference as long as they get sent to the Fort Worth Regional. But yeah, this has a lot of meaning for a lot of reasons. And they've had a share of championships the last 3 years in the regular season. They lose this one, that's 3 losses, and all of a sudden it becomes a bit tougher to climb into a chance to get at least a piece of a regular season title. They
probably have a chance to obviously win the SEC tournament title. You mentioned Kim Mulkey, and that's part of the reason why I think that the energy will be in the building there at the Moody Center. For those that don't know, Coach Mulkey can be a polarizing person. What's their relationship like with Coach Schaefer and Coach Mulkey? Obviously, they compete for a lot of the same student athletes, a lot of the same players they have since Mulkey's early days. What's that relationship like? Is there one, professional? Is there any animosity? What's kind of beneath the surface there between those two coaches?
I think Kim Mulkey wants animosity with everybody, but this one I think is a little bit different, because the coach that Vic Schaefer replaced, Karen Aston, was actually on her staff at one point, and then they kind of butted heads, and there was animosity. I don't think there's anything more than 2 really good coaches animosity. Obviously, what Vic Schaefer did at Mississippi State certainly commands a lot of respect, and then beat him here last year, went to the Final Four. But Kim Mulkey likes to stir it up with everybody, and she'll trot out there on Thursday night and she'll eat it up. There'll be 10,500 on her, and she wouldn't have it any other way. But I mean, it's cliche, but she's so great for the game because we're talking about it, right? And everybody wants to see what she's wearing, and her antics on the sidelines are certainly memorable. But the bottom line is she gets teams to play, and look where Baylor is since she left. They're solid, but they aren't what they were, and LSU is what they weren't before she got there. So that says all about her coaching ability. But I think there's probably a lot of respect, not a lot of animosity. But Kim Mulkey doesn't need much of a reason to get irritated with anybody, including on her own side, I would imagine.
Exactly.
Just give Vic Schaefer the schedule, and then he'll get mad.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So bring up vendetta and all that stuff once again. Just in case we don't have you on before the Super Bowl, I want to know your early thoughts on Super Bowl 60 there between the Patriots and the Seahawks, and some of the ways that you think that will play out over there in Santa Clara.
I like Seattle. I like top to bottom what they have. I think. Sorry. I think.
I'm a Patriots fan, but I get it. I get it.
Yeah. No. I mean, I don't have any stock in it. I don't care one way or the other. But I kind of like what they have all around, top to bottom. Patriots have been living on the edge a little bit, and so it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to watching it without a rooting interest. I told you guys, about my Indiana, just the stress of all of a sudden them being good and what that toll that takes.
Yes.
So I'm relieved Sunday that I can just sit back and watch it at work and not really have much of an interest other than hopefully it'll be a really good game.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you because the last few years I've watched the Super Bowl just kind of just really passively, and then I forgot the intensity that comes with when you do have rooting interest with a specific team. It's terrible, especially when you go in knowing you're the underdog.
You get it all the time.
I know, but the thing is that now we're kind of in that underdog role, and I do feel like, hey, the Patriots seem to be playing with house money. Seem to be. So I mean, just seems like a.
You know what I'd do just to see the Cowboys in the Super Bowl? Like actually, just once.
That was my first year here, Patrick.
Oh wow!
Super Bowl, my first year here.
Wow!
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I've
had
never seen
3 sports moments where if you could relive that moment, the kind of feeling you get like no other. Indiana 1987, they win the national championship. Keith Smart beats Syracuse.
Yep.
The Vince Young touchdown for different reasons. I was part of the broadcast. He ran right past me on the sidelines. I was a sideline reporter. And then that pick.
Yep.
The pick when all I was thinking was, I can't believe they're going to lose because of that offsides penalty. Back where they had to settle for a field goal, and the team that didn't commit penalties was going to lose for that. And when he picked it, it was, it's that moment where you would love to be able to bottle it, and when you're having a rough day, just be able to relive it. It was incredible.
I know, absolutely was. Roger, thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus. Enjoy a worry-free Super Bowl this upcoming week, and some great basketball along the way.
Enjoy your stress.
Appreciate it. Roger Wallace joining us from Austin, Texas, and he nails it. I mean, like basketball will provide a lot of energy this week with obviously LSU and Texas on the women's side. But I do get being able to watch a Super Bowl worry free.
Well, guess what? All we're going to do on this show this week is start to increase your stress levels more and more, because we're going to talk about it every single day this week. So the more you talk about it, the more you're going to get stressed over it.
Especially with Drake's shoulder, because we have no idea what's going on there. We'll find out more of that information coming up this week. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, let's take a look at the latest AP poll. Who is the highest ranked SEC team? We'll have that and more next. Closing up our first hour here on Southeast Sports Plus, take a look at the latest top 25 polls. Tennessee slides in there at number 25. Also Louisville, Miami, Ohio, St. John's there, and Arkansas.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest surprises of the weekend was Arkansas falling to Kentucky after technical fouls galore. I have to go back and recount how many there actually were, but I don't think I've ever seen a game. And it's not even really a rivalry yet. It's just that it has extra meaning, obviously, because Calipari came over from Kentucky a few years ago. So it's not like on that UNC Duke level where, sometimes you'll get the heated exchanges. But, I mean, goodness, so many technical fouls within a 38-second span.
I want to keep this up for just a second. 2 teams that you do not see on there. They're the 2 highest-ranked teams as far as getting votes. Texas A&M and Alabama.
Yeah.
Alabama now out. Texas A&M still not ranked. Are you surprised? Because I am. I'm shocked. They're the number 1 team in the SEC, and as far as standings go, but still not ranked in the top 25.
I'm surprised that Texas A&M's not ranked. I'm not surprised by any means that Alabama's out.
Me too.
It's like, what more do you have to do? I mean, do you just, like, your one loss was against Tennessee, who is number 25 on there. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know if that's what they're taking into consideration, but I mean, they're the number 1 team in the SEC right now.
Only
Makes
4
no
losses.
sense.
Yeah, 17-4 so far
sense.
right now. But outside of the top 25, let's go inside the top 20. Clemson, St. Louis, the Billikens are in there. A couple of teams out of the ACC in Virginia and Clemson. Also Florida, they're at number 17. That's Roger Wallace just said, one of the more dangerous teams right now in the SEC. They're right now number 2 in the SEC as far as the standings go there, and then also BYU.
Yeah, Florida is a half game back of Bucky McMillan and Texas A&M, but I have to retract all of my statements that I made against Florida early on in the season, because I honestly think, and I did this on my overreaction last week, Florida's the best team in the SEC. I honestly think they're going to go back to the Final Four. Boogie Fland is starting to impact the game in more ways than just his scoring. I believe he had 8 steals.
Yes, program record.
A program record, 8 steals, just an absolutely ridiculous number. He also put up a few points to go with it, but that's just the thing that he needs to start doing. He doesn't need to score all these points. He just needs to start affecting the game in more ways than one, and it seems like he's starting to figure it out.
Yeah, unlike the women's side where it's chock full of teams in the SEC in the top 15, this next graphic is the highest ranked SEC team you will find, the Vanderbilt Commodores. They were for a longest time. Arkansas was the highest ranked a couple of weeks ago, and now it's back to Vanderbilt, but that the SEC being 15th, the highest ranked team, it lets you know, kind of lets you know 2 things. There is not that upper echelon crazy good team. There's a lot of teams stacked right there in the middle, and the highest ranked SEC team is not in the top 25. It just lets you know kind of how topsy-turvy this world is.
Yeah, and there was a second where I thought Ole Miss was going to force overtime against them. They had 2 chances there as time expired, but Vanderbilt squeezed out a win in a short notice home game. We talked about that a little bit last week on how they had to flip it. So Ole Miss will get the home game later. North Carolina's got an absolute tough test tonight against the Syracuse Orange.
Right.
Totally so tough. And then Kansas coming off that nice win over BYU.
Huge there. Top 10 we go into now. Michigan State, Nebraska coming down, but still stay inside the top 10. Houston there at number 8. You have Gonzaga in there as well. And the top 5 kind of remains the same. One notable move up is Illinois in there at number 5, up 4 spots from last week. Hour number 1 is in the books. Hour number 2, Southeast Sports Plus is next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Gerhard Mathangani.
There's been a firestorm in college basketball on both sides of the aisle on whether to let professional players play college basketball. We've talked about it with G League guys. Charles Bediako has been on the court. We talked about it with European players as well who play professionally across the pond. This might be one of the first times we see a guy who has NBA experience coming back into college basketball. Amari Bailey looking to return to college hoops. He has hired an agent. He has hired a lawyer to fight with the NCAA and try to return to college for one more season. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, this one will be an interesting one. I think a lot of people will follow this because there have been a lot of vocal voices out there, including John Calipari, who coaches at Arkansas, including Tom Izzo, who coaches at at Michigan State, saying that they do not want professional players playing in college basketball. This is a guy who's played 10 games at the highest level on planet Earth. And Amari Bailey is saying he wants to come back and play 1 year longer. How did this land for you?
Well. It was only a matter of time, I felt like, in my opinion. And when I heard about this news Friday evening, that's exactly what I said. I was like, with the whole Charles Bediako situation coming back, the lawyer obviously, or the judge recused himself. So we should be getting a resolution here in the coming days. Mm-hmm. I believe the next hearing is set for in, I believe, 2 or 3 days from now. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken. So we should get some clarity on his future. We had talked about that situation. We both obviously thought that, hey, like, is this really what we want the NCAA to become? And in the back of my mind, I was sitting there thinking, I jokingly threw out, hey, should Sears come back and play?
Right.
And then look at what we have now.
Yeah.
Now we actually have a guy who has played 10 games, albeit a few years ago. That doesn't change the fact that he's played games in the NBA. Trying to come back and play college basketball, I mean, it's like, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So, I just don't understand where this thing is going. Like, it makes no sense.
Let me read to you what part of his statement and see if this changes your mind a little bit.
Okay.
It says, quote, "Right now I'd be a senior in college." This is what he told ESPN. "I'm not trying to be 27 years old playing college athletics. No shade to the guys that do that. That's their journey. But when I went to play professionally, I learned a lot and went through a lot. So why not me?" That's his quote that he told ESPN. And it's almost the same case with Charles Bediako. Bediako, he would have been a senior this year when he went to go play pro ball. And so I think that there is a bit of a difference in a guy whose eligibility window is still open. I might see it a little bit differently. And he said, obviously no disrespect to the guys that are older that try to come back. He says he's not one of those guys. He says that, he's still within the window of him playing, in college basketball. And he'd be a senior this year. To me, it does make it seem like it's a little bit more digestible than some of the other situations.
I don't know, though, because he signed an NBA contract, actually played in professional. I mean, the NBA is without a doubt the most premier basketball professional league across the entire world. Right. I know basketball in Europe is starting to grow up. Obviously, France has been putting together some really good teams that play in the summer games. Obviously, had a nice run with Wemby going up against arguably the Dream Team 2.0 a few years ago, where Curry turned into prime 2015 Curry. But it's just like, I don't know how you can obviously, the NCAA is not going to allow this to happen. So you'd have to go the file for a restraining order route just to have a chance. I don't know how you could ever find a resolution for this. This is just crazy. That I'm trying to come up with synonyms or basically examples of this being able to be a thing. It's like, oh, here we go. You ready? I got it.
Okay.
It's like Paul Skeens going back to LSU. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I mean.
In a way, because Skeens, obviously, he might be probably a top 5 pitcher in all of baseball.
Maybe not Skeens. Maybe his teammate, Dylan Cruz. Maybe that one's a little bit better. Because, Skeens is mainstream now.
Yeah, he is.
And Amari Bailey had a pretty good career at UCLA.
Right.
Obviously, Dylan Cruz also had a pretty good career at LSU, but he's kind of in that little rebuild right now over there in Washington. It's just like, how can we allow this to happen? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, the NCAA's president, Charlie Baker, he said a couple of months ago that the association with the NCAA will not allow a player who's signed an NBA contract to be granted eligibility. I think that's going to be the hardline stance. Yeah. However, as we talked about before, Charles Bediako was able to play even though he signed with an NBA G League team, albeit a G League team, with Charles Bediako being able to play. He's also only able to play because he did not go through the NCAA. He went through the court system. And I feel like this is where we're headed with Amari as well, Amari Bailey. I just think that this is going to be kind of murky as we move forward, because these guys are just going to take it to court despite what they do in basketball's highest level.
I mean, is that truly the loophole that we're going to see moving forward? Because obviously we've seen the NCAA cannot enforce any of its rules.
Right.
As much as they want to threaten legal action and suspension and vacating wins and all of that, like what are they going to do? They're just all talk right now, and they haven't been able to enforce any of these rules. So it's just like, obviously, if there's a will, there's a way for these guys that, tried to test. It's so weird. They tested the professional waters.
Right. And
it didn't work out. As you saw on that graphic, he averaged 2.3 points a game in 10 games with Charlotte 3 years ago.
Right.
And now we're starting to see him basically be like, as you mentioned, he's 21 years old. He's still within the framework of most of these college athletes, trying to go back. And I also saw that he said that he wants to, change his image of how people perceive him. It just, there's a fine line. If you want to go and change your image, why don't you go and play in the G League?
Right.
Go and get your stats up. I mean, we're starting to see that with Bronny James. Bronny James is doing so well in the G League. A lot of people thought he left USC a little bit early.
Right.
In my opinion, I think he might have left USC a little bit early. But when your dad's LeBron James, I mean, anything goes.
Sure.
But it's just, I don't think trying to go back to college basketball is really the way, because you see all of these NBA scouts and these NBA GMs, they draft mostly based off of age. They like the younger guys because they have more time to develop.
Right.
And as you get older, you start to run the risk of more injuries and stuff like that. It's just a weird situation.
I find it interesting too, the teams that have done this, that have gone this route. Alabama with Charles Bediako, what do they need? They need an inside presence to be able to get that to the next level. There you see some of the guys that have NBA or G League ties in college basketball this season. Of course, Charles Bediako, probably the one that's the most well-known considering his situation. You have a guy at Baylor, guy at Santa Clara, and as well as a guy over at BYU. So this would be another interesting wrinkle as it relates to it. But Alabama needed a big man, and Alabama was kind of on the outside looking in as far as the upper echelon of the SEC. UCLA right now is 15-7. They're 7-4 right now in conference play there in the Big Ten. He could help this team a lot as they move forward, which I find that part interesting as well, where the teams that are entertaining it, so to speak, and he hasn't said that he wants to come back to UCLA specifically, he wants to go back to college basketball, one would think is going to be UCLA. Yeah. I just find it interesting, though, it's the teams that could use the extra talent. It's not Arizona that we're talking about. It's not Michigan that we're talking about. We're talking about the teams that are right there on the outside looking in.
I mean, college basketball is already basically the minor leagues for the NBA. I mean, college sports in general are just the minor leagues for the NBA at this point. So it's almost like, calling up Joe Flacco and being like, hey, I need a quarterback. And if you're the Browns, this is a perfect example of what happened a few years ago when Joe Flacco led the Browns into the playoffs and had a playoff appearance against the Texans. So it's just like, you can't really fault these guys for trying, but it's just so embarrassing that this is even like a thing.
Right.
Like that's just my whole thing about it.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if he does return back to college basketball. But the team he's looking to go to, UCLA, they just lost to Indiana. Yeah. They're now 17-4, I believe, or 7-4 right now in the Big Ten. After that loss, it's obviously a proud basketball program. With the likes of Bill Walton, the late great Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and several others who've walked through that program and gone through those buildings. And I haven't heard this yet, but I want to hear it. They're apparently the coach so far of the Bruins had something to say after that big game. And you dubbed this on our show rundown as possibly the best soundbite of the year.
Yeah, I don't know about the best soundbite of the year, but it's just one of the funnier ones just because, he was so heated about his team's defense and just the lack thereof against Indiana.
We deserve to lose. We went through a stretch where we were pouting and letting one shot affect the next shot. We couldn't score for a long time. That's how we got down 10, missing wide open shot after wide open shot, because we act like somebody stole our favorite toy and we're a 3-year-old. Our defense was awful all night for the most part. Our defense was awful all night. We went over that play 5 times yesterday at the end of practice, 5 times last night, and 5 times this morning. We showed that play on film 10 times in the last 2 days. Of course, and my staff told me it was our ball. I just watched it. It sure looked like it was off Indiana's elbow. I just watched it. Now, I'm watching it on a small iPad, but I watch it one time. I don't know.
That is hilarious. It's the second time we've heard a coach reference kids. First it was John Calipari talking about going back to 8th grade basketball, and then now Mick Cronin is like, hey, we act like we're a 3-year-old and somebody just stole our toy.
I mean, you look at this, as you mentioned, this is a proud program in UCLA, and obviously they expect to win. The guys over their counterpart there, USC, also a proud basketball program. Yeah. They expect to win. It's been a rough few years. It seemed like ever since Johnny Juzang left UCLA, they've just been unable to get back to where they were. And obviously, you mentioned as well, it's always the teams that need the help that go out and search for it. And they could definitely use some good guard play moving forward. Alabama needed a guy that would go up and get some rebounds. They got that in Charles Bediako, but is it working out for them? Not really, because, I mean, I think they're 1-2 in games that Charles Bediako plays. And obviously, UCLA just isn't really where they want to be right now. But let's just, since we like to play hypothetical here, if Amari Bailey were to get that temporary restraining order and actually play in a game, what do you think the punishment should be? Because they're going to get a punishment at some point, because this is definitely getting out of hand.
Yeah, I think that they would possibly vacate the wins. I think if you do that, though, you're going to have to do that across the board. Yeah. For all these guys, you had a great graphic of the guys that have NBA or G League players that are on their teams. What would this mean for Baylor? What does this mean for Santa Clara? What does this mean for BYU? I think if you do it with one, you're going to have to do it across the board. And I don't know I think it's a slippery slope if you start to punish people.
But the only thing I have to say about that is, I mean, Amari Bailey's played in NBA games. The other guys haven't. They've just played in G League games.
But what do you consider? So that's the thing. Because it is such a gray area, what do you consider professional basketball? Do you consider it? Where does that cutoff line begin? Because if you play in G League games, G League is subsidized by the NBA. The European leagues, those are subsidized by those whatever countries that own those leagues. I just feel like you're going to get into legal talk where it's like, hey, this counts as professional football. This doesn't. We make a basketball or a football correlation. If a guy plays in the UFL, as opposed to maybe Arena League, as opposed to the NFL. If he just plays in NFL preseason games and plays in the UFL, did he play pro football? I would say so. I think a lot of people would say, hey, did you get paid? Did you get paid to play this game on a higher level than the NCAA? You've played pro ball. But then those tentacles go long and wide.
In this case, then why doesn't Carmelo Anthony go back to Syracuse for 3 years?
And I think that part to me is going to be interesting, because it will say, hey, does this include everybody with eligibility? But see, Amari Black and Bediako, they fall in this interesting category where had they not gone pro, they would still be in college. Yeah. And so their eligibility window is still open. They're 5 years to play for.
You know the consequences, though, when you sign with an agent and declare for the draft. That is purely stated in the rules. So I just don't understand why, they're trying to play this role where it's like, okay, I want to come back to college basketball, but I fully knew what I was signing up for when I declared for the draft. That's why I'm just trying to make sense of what's going on, because they don't tell me that they didn't know. They didn't know. Like, I don't want them to come out and be like, oh, I didn't know or anything. They definitely knew. And this has just gotten so ridiculous now. I can understand G League sort of, but as you mentioned, The NBA is still the NBA, though.
Yeah, still the highest level.
Even though the G League is a subsidy of the NBA is literally the NBA. He played for the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, and true professional NBA highest level games.
Absolutely professional. There is no way we, as a college basketball and college sports, the NCAA cannot allow this at all. Like, this has just gone bonkers.
Exactly, and they won't grant the eligibility. That's for sure. They will not grant it. The way that he'll get on the court in a college basketball uniform is to go through the courts the same way Charles Bediako did. We'll find out if he does it pretty soon here as Amari Bailey looks to go back to college hoops. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Nashville. We'll catch up with our good friend Corey Curtis and break down a couple of nice wins for the Vanderbilt Commodores. That and more next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. One of the more entertaining games in the SEC this past weekend with Vanderbilt getting a win over Ole Miss by 3 points, escaping there against the Rebels. And we are joined by our good friend Corey Curtis. Corey, this is a Vanderbilt basketball team, 15th right now in the country. Nice win over Ole Miss. I think some people might, say, hey, you should beat Ole Miss by more points than that. But I do feel like, a win is a win for this team. They stopped the bleeding a little while ago. What do you make of this team now as we're kind of on the back half, going into the back half of SEC play?
Yeah, you don't apologize for any wins in conference play. They're all tough. Look, and that was kind of a must-win for them because that was supposed to be a home game in Oxford and got switched to Nashville, and so you really got to defend the home floor. But the bigger point is, they lost those 3 games in a row, and we wanted to see how they would respond and what they would learn from it, and they did. They won 3 in a row since then, and so now they're 6-3 in the SEC. They're 15th in the country, and they appear to have bounced back from that bump in the road. Tyler Tanner continues to score points. And they continue to do it without Frankie Collins and Duke Miles. Duke Miles, missed another game, and this is a guy averaging upwards of 16, 17 points a game. They found that they can still do it and are still winning. I think they tightened up their defense a little bit. I think they got the rebounding improved a little bit because that's where they really got hammered some. And so, do you learn from your defeats? And I would think the answer to that is yes. Do I think that means it's their last defeat? No, I don't. But also Tyler Tanner today was named, one of the top 10 in the Bob Cousy point guard watch list. Mm-hmm. So, and more national honors starting to come that young man's way.
Do you think he has a case for SEC Player of the Year, or do you think he just the
Sure.
few games where he didn't really put up the numbers that you would expect him to put up might have kind of put him in the back a little bit?
Well, I mean, look, there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And they're in the upper half of the division, the upper quarter of the conference, and he's averaging upwards of 20 points a game. Mm-hmm. I mean, what did he have against Ole Miss? 23?
24, yeah.
Yeah.
24, yeah. I mean, he's the guy. And, he's the guy on one of the best players on the team. And really, he's gotten better as they've gone along. When you get better as you go along, people, I don't think, weigh as much what happened at the beginning. Now he's not the big, powerful guy, and Vanderbilt's not Kentucky, and it's not Arkansas, and it's not Florida. So he's going to have those things against him. But if he continues playing like he's playing, got a pretty good argument, in my opinion.
Right.
I don't know.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Coach Mark Byington and his team, 3 straight losses. They've bounced back with 3 straight wins since then. The latest one over Ole Miss. Before we get to the question about where this team is right now, let's hear from Coach Byington.
People need to be distracted sometimes with sports, and it's one of my favorite things. I love watching sports and sometimes just kind of being a fan. This game was hard to prep for and hard to come into. We were dealing with a lot. Ole Miss was dealing with a lot, and to play the game today was probably challenging for both teams. We felt it. I'm in a situation with no power still and some guys on my team, and I know Oxford has the same issues. Challenging times for both teams. And, to play a game right now, you just got to figure out a way. I mean, I'm exhausted. Our team's exhausted. I don't think it's getting any warmer. But at the same time, hopefully we gave the fans here, a good game. I meant to say this. I had a view of Malik Diaz's shot, and I thought it was going in when it left his hands. And I didn't think the first one was going in. I had a good view of that one, and I knew that was wide. And then he got the ball in the corner, and I was like, oh, gosh, we're tired already. We can't do overtime.
Corey, there are 18 SEC games. We're 9 games in so far, 9 games left. This job for Coach Byington, what do you make of what he's been able to do with this team now, considering the fact that there's another set of adversity with the weather? I just learned from Patrick that he's been living in his office, I think, since for the last week or so. Can you explain just to Coach being able to kind of push all the right buttons, so to speak, here with this team?
Well, first off, I'm not going to feel sorry for the coach, because you guys know that every coach is looking for a reason to sleep in the office. None of those guys actually like to go home. They live their jobs. That's what I've always known about coaches. They live their jobs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Mark Byington likes to sleep in the hallway, but that guy likes to coach basketball. That's pretty clear. I don't think that's the worst thing that's ever happened to him. Look, we do. I mean, it's all over the Southeast. We have a tragedy. Right now we had hundreds of thousands of people without power. We still have people without power here. It's still cold here, and so we're still battling. So you were asking about the job he's done, or where this team is headed? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the job he's done overall, and considering all of the adversity he has to go through.
Well, I mean, look, you've got a team that I think only carried over 3 players from last year. Yeah, and that was by choice. Okay. He knew he had a good team last year. He went to the tournament last year, but that's not the goal. The goal is to go as far as possible. And so he wanted the same style of team, but a bigger team, one that could play better defense, it could rebound better. And so, you've seen that. And like I've said, they have faced some adversity, and I think that they would tell you that adversity is making them stronger. I think it's good to take some lumps along the way. Shea Ralph said it last week after they got drilled by the Gamecocks, that will make them better. And I think, this team coming back and winning 3 in a row, I don't care who it is in the SEC. That's terrific. So, I think as long as they keep kind of chugging along the way they're chugging along, they're 6-3. If they went 6-3 again in the back half and went 12-6, I think you'd have to be pretty darn happy with that.
Yeah.
I think if you get, if you're anything over 10 wins in this league, you got to be pretty happy with where you are. And, can you get Duke Miles healthy for the postseason? I think that, because, trying to replace 17 points a game is a lot of points to come up with.
Yeah.
And, every game or so, every other game, some guy's going to pop for you, but maybe not for 17, maybe for like 8 or 10. And so, they need to get that young man back on the court because he alleviates some of the pressure on Tanner and Nickel to really fill it up. I mean, you kind of know what McLaughlin and Washington are going to do for you, and once in a while, one of those guys emerges with like a 15-point night. But, they are what they are. They're 10-10 type of guys.
Yeah.
And so, he's done a good job. His team is who it is. We've seen that. Nothing is going to sway them off of that. And if they get pushed a little bit, they'll respond. And so, I think he has to like where they are. Is it good enough in March? That's why we play.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about how you would like to see them go at least 6-3 in these last 9 games. I think it definitely helps that the quote-unquote brunt of your schedule is over with. I believe that they only have 2 games remaining against ranked opponents, but in my opinion, it should be 3, because I think it's a travesty that Texas A&M still isn't ranked yet, which is just it's absolutely ridiculous in my opinion.
Are they in first?
Yes,
they're first. 7-1.
It just makes no sense at all. AP voting has been crazy this year in football and basketball. But how confident are you in this team's ability to finish the year strong after going through that 3 games?
Yeah, I've got no reason to doubt them.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they're going to lose some games. I mean, but the job he did last year, the job he's doing this year, nothing is slowing Tyler Tanner down. All right. Duke, Devin McLaughlin continues to be Devin McLaughlin. Tyler Nickel continues to be Tyler Nickel. And, it's just a matter of keeping up the intensity on the defensive end of the floor and on the boards. Because those 2 things should never take a night off. We have seen them have games where they struggle to shoot the basketball. We weren't sure we were going to see that for a while when they were scoring 100 points a game, but we've seen it. They've got to have that maturity, and I think this is a pretty mature basketball team. And look, I watched them lose badly a couple of times when they played Texas and they played Arkansas, and they ran into buzzsaws those nights, and I don't feel like they came unglued.
Right.
They just didn't play their best, and those other 2 teams played really, really well those nights, and it happens. I mean, we all know what it looks like when the wheels come off the wagon.
Oh yeah.
Right? We've seen that before, and I don't worry about that with this basketball team.
Absolutely. We'll flip it over to the women's side, because this is a team like the men. Really nice run to start the season. Went through some adversity, lost a pair of games to South Carolina and to Ole Miss, so no shame in that, obviously. But then bounced back with a nice win over Florida and a really tough stretch that is coming up right now. What do you make of this Vanderbilt women's basketball team right now, especially that superstar there in Blake's?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I think losing was the best thing for them.
Yeah.
Because that undefeated record can start to weigh like an anchor on you, and it certainly puts a bullseye on you, and that's certainly what happened to them when they went to South Carolina. So again, you want to see how they handle adversity, and Shea Ralph was adamant that they would be better because of it, and she pointed to the one person who I thought she needed to point to, and that's the freshman point guard, Aubrey Galvin, because she's going to be the one that everybody goes after in the postseason. She's a freshman. She's got the ball in her hands. She's extremely confident, but when you've got the game in your hands, they're going to come after you. And, if, there was a game, or I can't remember which one it was earlier this year, Blake's got into foul trouble that they still managed to win without it. That's the other thing. Are people going to try to go after her defensively? But they're still 7-2. They're 21-2 in the league. Third place, tied with LSU. And let's face it, guys, the women's side is not like the men's side.
No.
The women's side is a gauntlet.
Yes.
All right. So if you're sitting where South Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, LSU, Texas, Mississippi are, you're really good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right. None of those teams has anything to apologize for.
Right.
All right. And all of those teams, if they showed up in that Final Four bracket, you wouldn't be surprised.
Would not be shocked. Yeah.
All right. So you're going to lose some of those games. And you know what? When you win some of those games, that really says something about you.
Absolutely. We'll take a look at what is upcoming here for this basketball team. And like you said, this is going to be a difficult road here. Top 20 team there in Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas,
they all have
Georgia,
numbers next to them.
Every single one of them. I think the only team that won't there towards the end, just depending on. And I think obviously if they beat Georgia, they might take Georgia out. But literally every single one of them going into this week is all ranked. What do you feel like would be Coach's message as he talks to this team about what they're about to go through? Because it's not like the schedule has been easy, but it has been easier than it is on the back half.
I think Shea Ralph would just say to play them one at a time.
Yeah,
because that's what any coach. You can't play more than one at a time. But also, you cannot get too high or too low, because the reality is if you lost all 5, you'd still be 7-7 in the SEC, and that's not a terrible record. But you don't want to be headed in that direction. I certainly don't think that they'll be headed in that direction. They've got Texas, and that will be, a big time matchup. Is that one here in Nashville? I think it is.
Which one? The
Texas.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, they had LSU here and they beat them, and it'll be very interesting to see how good of a crowd that they can get over there, because it really feels like since the football season ended, it's really picked up over at Memorial, and some of that magic is back. But the fact that they've got the LSU and the Mississippi skins on the wall already, I think that really helps their case that they're not a fluke.
Right.
Didn't got there by not beating anybody. They've beaten people. There's 5 games there. I guarantee you they're gonna lose at least one.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's okay. How competitive are you? What do you learn from it? And and I think the biggest challenge for Shea Ralph's team is I don't think they're as deep as the men's team is. I don't think they're getting as much production off the bench. And so they've either got to stay out of foul trouble, or they've got to find a way to start getting some more production from some more people.
And you teed that up perfectly. Here is Coach Ralph on that defense.
It's important for a couple reasons. You said it right. It's a lot of minutes, but Michaela and Aubrey, they don't like coming out. So they like playing, which is helpful, but we've got to give them breaks when we can, right? But the other part of it, it's nice to have kids that come off the bench with confidence. So today was a huge thing to me for our team, but also for Aga and Ava. Ava's done it a couple of times to be able to know, this is my job. This is what I can do because I've done it before. So it's different when you get into March and you're like, hey, good luck. You haven't played all year, but hopefully you can give us something good today. Finding kids that can do what they did today. Mitch is a good example of that as well. Big moments during this season. They know what their job is, and now they're going to continue to focus and have confidence because they've done it. Not because we hope they can do it, but today they changed the game for us. So they've done it, and now we'll just keep building on that. That is huge. That's 2 more kids we can count on when we really need to.
So Coach Ralph finding some extra bodies to help out in the late stretch there of the season. Before we let you go, we haven't spoken to you since the Tennessee Titans have made a couple of big moves with their coaching staff. Most notably the head coach, of course, a familiar guy in Robert Saleh, former coach of the New York Jets. Great job as the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers this past season. What did you make of the hire, and what does it mean for this franchise moving forward?
Well, look, they want someone to be a leader of their football team, a real focal point, and he oozes that. I mean, he's absolutely a very magnetic guy. He's got the Vrabel, aura when he walks in the room that he's there and he's in charge. Now, does he have the same personality as Mike Vrabel? No, he doesn't, and that doesn't make him better or worse. He is commanding. He is smart. He's calculated. I thought, his answers were all extremely, well thought out, and I think he's got a clear plan for it. But guys, the thing that strikes me about this job for him is this is the one that he wanted. Everything reported, what he said to us, this was the job that he wanted. It's gonna be his last chance. You usually don't get a third bite at the apple. And so there was a lot here that he saw that he liked, and I think it starts with Cam Ward. To be successful as a head coach, because it's going to be, look, he'll get a third job if he wins here. But if he doesn't win here, then he won't. And so, that was striking. Obviously getting Brian Daboll to be the team's offensive coordinator is a big move. And it's interesting how he's going to call the defense, which he did not do with the Jets. And, he's not doing it because he doesn't trust someone else to do it, or because he likes to call defense. He feels like it connects him better with the players.
Right.
He's more invested in every play with them, and I think he missed that part of the game last time around with the Jets. The one thing that I would caution is what got Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan got all obsessed with being this offensive play caller and wizard, and didn't put being head coach first. Okay. So Robert Saleh can call the defense, but he still has to be the head coach first. You can give Brian Daboll autonomy over the offense. He's even allowed him to hire some of the assistants, but still has to be your team.
Yeah.
You can't have two head coaches. You can't have two units playing for two different groups. It's got to be one guy. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. He knows this, but after what I just watched, that's why I'm leery of that you've really got to set the standard that, yes, I'm calling the defense, but I'm everyone's head coach, and I'm going to get to know all of you, and all of you are important to me. And in fact, that's one of the most important things he said. If you want to lead, your guys have to know you care about them as people before they'll perform as players.
Right.
And I mean, when you take a look at, you talked about how this is probably going to be Robert Saleh's last chance as a head coach unless he wins. And the main thing that spelled his doom there with the Jets was, I mean, he had a great defense, but he had Zach Wilson as his quarterback, and the offense couldn't do anything. How confident are you in Brian Daboll in getting the most out of Cam Ward because it seems like the Titans, albeit you'll probably have to give them a year or two to get the guys that Saleh wants in. How confident are you in Daboll being able to get the most out of Cam Ward?
By the way, we've got breaking news. Ian Rappaport reporting that Gus Bradley has just been hired as the Titans defensive coordinator.
Some big names there. There's three big names.
Very big. He was Robert Saleh's mentor with the Seattle Seahawks, and he was Robert Saleh's first choice to be defensive coordinator. He didn't know if he was going to get him or not because he wants to call the defense. And obviously Gus Bradley's going to want to call the defense, but now Robert Saleh will call the defense with Gus Bradley on his coaching staff, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, but it looks like he's gotten his first choice with both coordinator positions, which is very, very, very big for this football. Gus Bradley's been a good defensive coach for a long time.
Yeah.
It's a really nice addition for this team. Back to Brian Daboll, guys. What I like most about that hire is if you watch the New York Giants with Jackson Dart at quarterback, and Brian Daboll didn't have him for a very long time before he got fired, but when he did, he focused on what Jackson Dart could do, and not what he wanted him to do, but what he could do, and he played to his strengths, and that was a lot of RPO, a lot of slants over the middle, and a lot of Dart running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And because that's what he was good at, and you've got to put these guys in position to do what they're good at until they're ready to do what you want them to do.
Right.
And that's I've seen it here. The last two quarterbacks, Will Levis and Cam Ward, were both given the whole phone book instead of just A and B to start with.
Right.
And it was too much. And so when Brian Callahan got fired, and Mike McCoy took over, and again, Mike McCoy did a hell of a job, and I know everybody wants to bang on him. He deserves a ton of credit. I know he only won 2 games,
right? But
he won 2 games with a team that looked like they couldn't string 2 first downs together
100%.
when he took him over. And so he simplified the offense. They ran the football. They shortened up Cam Ward's throws. They put him in more comfortable situations. And you saw him have 2 touchdown passes 4 games in a row. And after having, 3 for however
the other 15 weeks.
Yeah. And so, that Brian Daboll is an extension of that, a better extension of that. Okay. So he's going to put Cam Ward in position to do what Cam Ward does.
Right.
And then expand it from there. Now, what do they surround him with? That remains to be seen.
Right.
What changes do they make? Are they able to add a 1 in the wide receiver room?
Yes.
What are they going to do at tight end if Chigankonkwo walks, which is what's to be expected?
Right.
But they've got well over $100 million in cap space.
Absolutely.
Now, that doesn't mean there's $100+ million in players that they should go out there and sign. But it also, by the way, expect Peter Skoronski to get a contract extension.
Yeah.
And expect I would Jeffrey Simmons has a bunch of years left on his deal, but he's out of guaranteed money. I would expect a new deal for Jeffrey Simmons this summer too, to give him more guaranteed money, especially coming off the year that he just had. So some of the money is going to get eaten up there.
Right.
But they'll bring in a veteran receiver. It's just a matter of which one. And I'm sure they're going to draft an end and then probably have to sign one.
Right.
Who's available. So it's just a matter of what you surround everybody with and where you're going to spend your money.
Absolutely. 3 heavy hitters there coming on the Tennessee Titans staff. Robert Saleh, Brian Dable, and then as you mentioned just moments ago, breaking news that Coach Gus Bradley will be coaching that defense there. Certainly a whole lot of fun stuff to cover there with the Tennessee Titans as far as the football team's concerned, and both basketball teams, the men's and women's, on the Commodore side. Thank you so much for your time here today, Corey.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Enjoy your week, and everybody out there, I hope you get your power back.
Absolutely. Very, very same to you and to everybody else that is there in Nashville, bracing this cold weather. And that's what I feel like if you're in the area right now affected by these storms, you're having to battle two things. You're having to, if you're day to day, we talked about with Coach Byington sleeping there in the office, and then what you have to do there to perform.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the team that Vanderbilt literally just played in Ole Miss, I think I told you this, my buddy goes to Ole Miss, and it took him 5 hours to drive from Oxford up to Memphis, which is usually, I believe, right around a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
Going 20 miles an hour because the roads were so icy. They've been out of school last week. They're out of school all of this week. So obviously a terrible situation all around there.
Yeah, certainly thinking about them as they brave the weather this upcoming week. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus are the defending men's college basketball national champions rounding into form. We'll talk about Florida's big win next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, another week in the books, week 5 in SEC men's basketball action. We'll take a look at the games from this past weekend. Buckyball, Texas A&M, they get a big win on the road against the Georgia Bulldogs, 92-77. Texas over Oklahoma. We talked about that game. Texas climbing out of a 14-point hole to pick up the win there. Missouri, a nice win over Mississippi State there at home. And LSU with a big win at South Carolina, picking up their second win in the SEC. The Kentucky Wildcats going to Calipari's house, going to Bud Walton. I got that game wrong last week. The Arkansas Razorbacks falling there to Mark Pope and company. And then you have the big win for Vanderbilt over Ole Miss. And then late Saturday night, you had Auburn and Tennessee playing. Tennessee getting the win there, 77-69. And the Sunday game, because there was no NFL games on, college basketball, putting some marquee college basketball men's and women's games on. The men's game was Alabama and Florida, a matchup of two teams that had a really strong year last year. Alabama, of course, going a deep run there in the college basketball tournament. But you also had a Florida team that won the national championship game last year. I got the intrigue from the outside looking in. These coaches also talking some smack as well going into the game. And Florida getting the win, not just winning, blowing Alabama out. What'd you make of it?
I think when you score 72 points in the paint, and we had been talking all year about how this is the strong suit of this Florida team, and that picture right there just sums up all the trash talking perfectly. We had talked about how Florida's strong suit was Houck and Condon and their ability to basically will this team into what I can now confidently say is this team is going to make another run. I mean, after this game and the performance that they showed, talked about Boogie Fland earlier, 8 steals, new program record, being able to affect more of the game than just his scoring. And then Xavier Lee still trying to figure it out. But once he figures it out, this team is going to be exactly like last year, where, they are 1 through 5 amazing, and then they've got their guard Urban that comes off the bench, and he's a really nice sixth man. But 72 points in the paint, it's just crazy. It's one thing to back up your trash talk about how when Todd Golden said a few weeks ago, we'll just beat him anyways. When he's talking about Charles Bediako. It's another thing to go right at him and score 72 points in the paint.
That is insane. I don't know which is the crazier stat. The fact that they had 3 3-pointers made and scored 100 points, or the 72 points in the paint, because like you said, Alabama has Bediako on the floor for that reason.
Or Chinyele's 14 points, 17 rebound, double-double.
Yeah, and that was a big storyline going into it. For the most part, Geniello had he was matched up against Charles Bediako, 14 points, 17 boards there. You talked about the big men, though, both Condon and Hall. I just feel like this could be a statement win for this Florida Gator basketball team. They're now 7-2 after the first half of SEC play. This might be the most impressive of them all so far to me because they took it to Alabama and they said, hey, look, we're going to play our game. Bama hit 14 three-pointers. Most games when they hit 14 three-pointers, they win. Yeah. Florida hit three three-pointers. Most teams that hit only 2 or 3 three-pointers in the game, they lose. It's not that case at all, and they wipe the floor with them. This, to me, is a dangerous Todd Golden team.
I talked about it on the show last week after the Auburn game, and that was definitely a dud for Todd Golden and company. But I believe it was, I want to say it was Thursday that I talked about this Florida team. I couldn't come up with words on what they did to that South Carolina team,
right?
In South Carolina last week. I mean, that was just pure domination, and this was another game of pure domination. I can't say that they're not going to lose another game because that would be just talking crazy. But I mean, when you have Condon going 11 for 15, 25 points, add those 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and then you've got Hauk, who is, in my opinion, a stretch 4, a stretch 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, wherever you want to play him, I think he could honestly project to the next level. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the first round of this next year's draft. Adding 5 rebounds and can do it and can affect the game, again, not with just scoring.
Right.
I mean, this team is just I don't even know what to say about it because it's just that was probably one of the more dominating weeks that I'd ever seen for any team. If we did team of the weeks, I mean, it would have to be Florida.
No question about it. No question about it. Todd Golden, as you mentioned, he said on the front end, we'd beat him without him. We'd beat him with him. He backed up his words.
Well, I mean, it's I was thinking about that a lot last night, actually. And, as this was a big, one-off ABC game, they were going to try to find different ways to stir it up. And, I thought when one of the Alabama beat writers or reporters talked to Nate about it on Friday, I thought his response, were very similar. He said, yeah, I understand where he's come from. Like, he's going to try to kick our, he's going to try to kick his. I don't think that's news to anybody. But with that being said, yeah, absolutely, right? To come out and impose our will the way we did, beat them on the glass. We scored 72 points in the paint. I thought our guys were in there for 1 second, 2 seconds, and then we would score it. So we did a good job taking advantage of our catches down there.
For those that don't know, it was a direct quote from Nate Oates saying that they take 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds in the paint, so that's the reason why they score so much. He said 1 to 2. Is Florida right now the best team in the SEC?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
I mean, just firmly placing it. 100 points against Alabama. I believe it was 92 points against South Carolina. Just utter domination. When it eerily reminds me of this team last year. And
right.
It seems like a lot was made, especially by me, about how it hasn't really seemed like Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee have been settling in yet.
Right.
Starting to see we first saw it in that Vanderbilt game, and they've just been progressing ever since.
No question about it. We'll talk the Bama side from where they go from here on out, coming up next here after the break. Closing up shop here on this Monday, the marquee game of all of college basketball in the SEC, Alabama and Florida. Florida made sure it was not a game, scored 100 points in a dominating win over Alabama. Let's flip to the Alabama side because coming into this game, I think a lot of people thought Alabama might have been able to find something as far as their offense overall. They did not play a terrible game offensively. However, Florida just too much. What stood out to you about Alabama's side and just some of the things they'll have to correct moving forward?
Well, I think first of all, you got to look at LeBaron Philon, and he has been obviously this leader for Alabama this season, but he only scored 15 points, which is an off night for him.
Yeah.
But he also turned the ball over 5 times, and I don't think that Alabama is going to win a game where LeBaron turns the ball over 3+ times. Just got to be more careful with the basketball. And I mean, you got to give credit to obviously Boogie Fland with those 8 steals and just the way that Florida was defending them all game. I think that's the one that sticks out to me.
Absolutely. We talked about Charles Bediako a lot beforehand. We heard from head coach Nate Oates on his team's performance on Sunday.
You know, it's hard to win a game when you're minus 16 on the turnovers, minus 6 on the old boards. Talk about trying to win a possession game. They destroyed us in the possession game. I mean, you know, they scored 100 points, only made 3 threes. You don't have to take many threes when you're getting dunks and layups off turnovers. So 25-0 on points off turnovers. Not sure I've ever been associated with a game like that, and that's disappointing. And it's also a credit to Florida's game plan. They went to the switching. We didn't handle it well. Their physicality on the switches caused our guards some major problems. We did a terrible job adjusting to it. You got to look in the mirror at what I did as a coach, and we just was not our night. And Florida's kind of had our number here lately. They've done a really good job, and they've guarded us a couple different ways. You know, they've been in a drop, and today they switched us in both ways. It worked well, and you know, typically they don't give us many threes, but in fact we got down as much as we did. You know, I think we ended up going 14-34, but a lot of those came when the game was out of hand already. So they do a good job kind of running us off the line.
We talked about it earlier with Charles Bediako and what this team has been with and without him. This team is now, I think, 1-2. It's a small sample size, only 3 games.
Small.
But he fouls out on Sunday. What do you make of this whole experience with Charles Bediako, and do you see him being a net positive for this team moving forward, despite the fact they've lost 2 of their 3?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can say it's a net positive or a net negative because, I mean, they've been better rebounding, but it just seems like for some reason they want to change their identity on who they are. They finally went back to who they truly were, and that being a 3-point shooting team against Florida. But the game before, the 2 games before, especially that Tennessee game, that one really stood out to me. Like, what is this team doing? Why are they trying to go in the paint so much? That's not the strong suit of their team. But it just seems like I said this about Kalen DeBoer with the O-line struggles under DeBoer.
Yeah.
It seems like for some reason Nate Oates can he can recruit the guards and the wing players, but for some reason the bigs just underperform under him. It just I don't know what it is, but it's been a weakness all year. It's been a weakness in years past. It's just so strange that obviously both of these teams at the same school are having the same sort of problems in certain areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Things don't get any easier this upcoming week because they play buckyball. Texas A&M comes to town. We'll break that game down a little bit more tomorrow as we get closer to game day. But as it stands right now, it seems to me like this kind of is probably a must-win-ish game for Alabama to get their minds right going in next week.
Is it a must-win game for Nate Oates over there in Tuscaloosa as well?
I think so too. Not as far as he won't get fired or anything, but just building this team's confidence. Thank you so much for joining us here on Southeast Sports Plus. We'll see you again here next week.